Hi again then guys, and welcome back to another look into the past on the Forza franchise, back to Forza Motorsport 2, in particular for one of the aftermarket tuner cars featured on the game, based on one of the most popular JDM cars anyway. And one of the things that you notice more and more when you drive these aftermarket cars in particular, not just on Forza even, but on any racing game, is that these cars more often than not represent, in effect, fan service. In real life, they serve a completely different purpose, and the purpose which aftermarket tuner cars serve in real life is completely different to what they are on a game. So, bear me out when I explain why. Because what I mean by that is that in real life, 9 times out of 10, these fully built aftermarket cars from companies like Mines, Spoon, HKS, a variety of other places, tend to be a showcase of what that company offers, be it exhaust parts, body parts, suspension, brakes, whatever the case may be. And of course, different companies offer different components, and those fully built show cars, in effect, offer an insight into what it can do for your car as a potential customer. That's what these cars are for. They're not designed to actually be sold or even to race 9 times out of 10. Sometimes they are used for racing, such as for time attack or drifting or some level of competition in some form, but usually they're not. This is one of those occasions where it kind of meets a middle ground, because it shows what the company can do, but at the same time it does have a more bespoke feel of not necessarily a production car, but one which you can actually just go out and buy, instead of buying all the parts and building it yourself. Because this manufacturer, or this aftermarket company, AB-Flug, is one which isn't featured on that many games. Even in the Forza franchise, it was kind of stuck to the older games rather than the newer ones, and there are a couple of different cars from them. Now, this car is a perfect, I would say, entry-level vehicle into their range. It's not necessarily the least powerful car that they offer, or at the same time necessarily the most beginner-friendly, but it's a good place to start, because it gives you an insight into what they offer. You can get even more extreme ones for sure, but at the same time, it's a good point to get a feel for what they're all about. And it's also a great rival for stuff like the Hennessy Viper, the Lingenfelter Corvette, the Goldstrand Corvette, and a couple of others as well, those very, very powerful aftermarket sports cars, because this is of course based on the Supra, that's pretty obvious, and it's called the S900. Now, as is suggested by the name, you're running a lot of power. Now, it's not exactly 900 horsepower, but it's pretty close. 888 is extremely high. That's even higher than the TVR Speed 12. You're also looking at 625 pound-feet of torque in a car that weighs 1,510 kilos. So it's very, very well placed against the Vipers and the Corvettes that I mentioned earlier, as well as some of the other aftermarket, for instance, JDM cars, like the Valeside Supras, for instance. Now, the horsepower per tonne on this car is pretty good, 588, which for its weight, as I said, is not bad at all. And the class is pretty high, S899, but at the same time, not ridiculously high. You can do a lot with that without making it a U-class vehicle, which of course severely limits what you can use it for. And the price tag is almost top tier, just under, at 246,000 credits. So it's quite a bit. But at the same time, you can understand why it would be. Most aftermarket cars tend to, as I said earlier, offer that insight into what the company can do, but on a very distinctly street level. Something like, for instance, a Mines Evo, or a Mines Skyline, or an REM Mamiya RX-7. They offer heightened performance, but not insane performance. They tend to have between 400 or 500 horsepower, which is very fast, but not insanely fast, and they are more focused, generally, on being an all-round package, rather than just for handling or just for straight-line speed. Something like the Sparco Evo is also another great example. It's got more power, but not a ridiculous amount of power. This car goes in more for the kind of bespoke supercar feel, where it really does take the Supra and turn it into, in effect, a true supercar. It's got the visuals of one, it's got the exclusivity which you'd expect from one, It has the kind of attention to detail which you would want from something like a supercar, and at the end of the day, the fact that it isn't a ground-up creation doesn't really take away from the fact that you could consider this a supercar, because if you think of many other supercars, they will often use many components from non-supercars, something like a Devon GTX, for instance, or the Alfa Romeo TZ3, which is basically just a reskinned Dodge Viper, but it works, and it works as a supercar. Likewise with this one, it takes the Supra from sports car level to, I would say, supercar level, and it does it very well. The performance is fantastic, the acceleration is very good, the top end speed is very good. It's not the quickest of Supras. Both of the Vale sides can give it a pretty great drag in a straight line, and overall they can beat it. But when you tune this one up, it's extremely quick. It's already extremely quick. The one that you can see here I haven't tuned at all, and it already handles like a dream, surprisingly, for a car with 888 horsepower. So I would say that this Supra is not just the best entry into the AB-Flug side of things, because they also have the RX-7 as well, and I can't recall if there are others. There might be, not off the top of my head, I can't remember at the moment. But this one I would say is definitely more beginner-friendly than the Vale side Supras, for instance, while at the same time delivering genuinely great performance. So this is a car that's definitely worth looking into if you go back to play Forza 2. It's pretty much the definition of a unicorn car, especially if you're talking about aftermarket vehicles, and it's one of the most powerful and one of the fastest aftermarket cars of the entire Forza franchise. So it's definitely worth looking into. Any Supra fan will get a lot of fun out of this car, and to be honest, the only thing which is kind of up for debate is whether or not it looks good, because I feel like it is the kind of car which some people might not like. Because one thing that you can say about AB-Flug is their cars do genuinely look different. The visual modifications which they offer are pretty unique, to say the least. So some people might not like them, some people might love them. Personally, I think these upgrades suit the car. It's a little bit more enticing looking than the Vale side Supras, which are more understated. Not that that's bad, but it just depends on the car, depends on how I feel at the time as well. And for me, I think they did it well with this one. Looks the part, and it certainly performs the part as well. But that's it overall for this particular pick. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.